All right, as part of our last set of empires across the world in the year 1500 CE, we're going to look at the Aztec and Inca empires today in the Americas. In terms of looking at geographic context for both of these two societies, we have the Aztec Empire, which is in central Mexico. We can see them in sort of the darker blue color towards the northern part of the map. Uh, they also have fertile valleys within Mexico, as well as lakes and plains that are allowing farming and chinampas. Um, you also have the Inca Empire, um, and this is in western South America. They, are mostly in the mountainous regions of the Andes Mountains, as well as coastal deserts that, have their place along the coast within South America. And all of this are sort of shaping how these two empires trade with other places and within themselves, how they expand militarily throughout the different regions that they control, and the agricultural systems that end up being set up because of that. In terms of thinking about the Aztec Empire, this is a empire that is centered at Tenochtitlan, which is near present-day Mexico City, and this capital was built on a lake, and um, near where Mexico City is presently today. And this is one of the most populated cities on Earth at the time. There are 200,000 people just in the city, which was unusual. Even thinking about this time, there were probably only like 20,000 people living in London at the time. But there's millions of people living throughout the empire. And so this is a very sophisticated empire as well that is based on agriculture, based on trade, based on the sort of tributes that we've been talking about throughout the last couple of days. And then we're also thinking about a highly militarized empire that is very good militarily and that is able to expand through conquest. Thinking about how it's run, the first and biggest figure within these societies, within this society, is an emperor who is the supreme ruler. Just like we've seen in other empires, the emperor decides on nobles and governors that end up controlling pieces of the empire and, sort of allow for the collecting of tribute to the emperor and taxes. And these tribute systems were a little bit more complicated than in some of the other empires, where people were required, if they were conquered, to provide food, textiles, gold, labor to the government. And this ensured wealth and resources for that capital of Tenochtitlan. And all of this is sort of creating connections between these regions that are keeping the empire together. In terms of military and technology, like I said a couple slides ago, it's a very strong army for conquest and defense. And some of that power comes from the weapons that they have. For instance, obsidian blades, which is a very strong material, a very strong metal, as well as clubs and bows as well. They also have siege tactics for conquering neighboring city-states, so they continue to conquest and add more land to the empire. And then you also have military expansion that keeps taking place, which is strengthening the amount of goods and labor that they have coming in from other areas within the empire. And this is bringing this empire together a lot more strongly. Now, there's a couple other ways in which the Aztecs were very, very advanced. And one of those ways was agriculture. And because of where they were situated on a lake, they had a problem with finding more land, especially since Tenochtitlan is surrounded by mountains where you don't necessarily always get the greatest growing soil. Um, so, in order to innovate off of that, they would sort of create these floating gardens where they would sort of just make land where it didn't exist, or at least above land, where it didn't exist. And these chinampas were floating gardens that were built in lakes. They were able to grow a lot of crops to support a huge population within the capital. And among the staples of this area were corn, beans, squash, chili peppers, all of which were used within the foods of this place. On top of that, you have marketplaces that are being created that are facilitating trade between regions to allow goods from one part of the empire to come into another part. And all of this is helping to support these huge urban populations and populations throughout the empire as well. Now, in terms of the culture of the Aztec Empire, looking at religion, it's a polytheistic religion where you have many different gods. They also practiced human sacrifice in order to please the gods, in which they would kill people as part of these religious ceremonies. You have a calendar system. They were very highly advanced in terms of astronomical observations as well. And then you also have, on top of it, artistic achievements like pyramids and sculptures and codices, which are showing how advanced this place is. On top of that, you have education for people, including nobles, and then a lot of commoners, people from lower social classes, are expected to train for the military as well. Now, in terms of looking at the fall of the Aztec Empire, a lot of this was brought about by the Spanish as they start to explore the Americas. So, from 1519 to 1521, Hernan Cortez, a Spanish conquistador, someone leading these conquests, ended up, going to the Aztec Empire. At first, amazed by the grandeur of the empire, and then deciding to take down this empire with his men and with other rival groups, rival kingdoms within the Americas. And just a couple of different factors. For one, the Spanish were really sort of smart if they are looking to bring down the Aztecs. They met up and sort of teamed up with these rival states, many of whom were not happy that the Aztecs had either taken them over or were more powerful than them. You also have superior weapons from the Spanish, like guns, steel swords, horses. Horses did not exist within the Americas at this point, and so that's a huge factor as well. And then disease was a huge part of it. The Aztec Empire had not come in contact with many of the diseases that the Europeans had sort of built immunity to, like smallpox. And so, unfortunately, as they brought these germs to the New World unknowingly, and sometimes knowingly, the unfortunate part is that a lot of Aztec people ended up dying from these diseases, and that sort of weakened the empire because that included soldiers who were trying to defend the capital, that included other peoples, that sort of made it an easier job for the Aztec Empire to fall. The other empire that we're going to talk about here is a little bit different because it takes place completely on the continent of South America, and it's also mountainous as well. And so the Inca Empire was an empire that stretched for over 2,500 miles across the Andes. The capital here is Cusco. The population is around 10 million people, so just like the Aztec Empire, controlling a lot of different people. And with the economy, they had redistribution of land to allow people to own the land and to be able to give more goods over to the government as taxes and tribute. They also are building terraces, sort of these flat patches of land within the mountains that are man-made, almost like a step system that would allow for crops to be grown and allow for food to be made. And then also the use of llamas for transport and for manual labor as well. Now, in total, the Inca Empire becomes a strong centralized state with using a combination of roads, of bureaucracy, for running this administration, for labor systems, to enable a greater, more connected empire. So in terms of how this administration ran, you had the emperor, which was the Sapa Inca. This was someone that was viewed almost as a god, and as divine, coming from the divine, sort of the spiritual realm. The bureaucracy then assigned governors to provinces, to run them for the Sapa Inca. And they did not have a written language within the Incan Empire. And so they would use these things called quipu, or quipu, which are these knotted strings that were used for record keeping, censuses, so tracking the population, as well as taxes. On top of that, they also, as a government, would redistribute land and redistribute food to ensure that everyone was, receiving ample food as well. And that would ensure stability because people are less likely to fight if all of their necessary needs are being met. And on top of that, they sort of connected the empire together and allowed for the collection of taxes and other administrative tasks through this extensive road system that were really, really sophisticated for the time period, given the mountainous areas that they're building through. Now, in terms of military and technology for the Inca Empire, they used slings and slings like slingshots, clubs, spears, bows. They unfortunately did not have wheels or draft animals like cows or bulls or oxen. So they used both human labor to carry people and goods around, as well as llamas in order to help transport. But they also did have some fortified cities like Machu Picchu, where they could sort of defend themselves from different armies and different groups that might try to take them over. Like I said, in terms of military, the other part of this is the road network that is in place here. So they built over 25,000 miles of roads in the 2,500 miles that this particular empire stretches. And this would allow for rapid troop movement and for communication as well. That was really, really sophisticated for the time. And on top of that, you're building over high areas. And so building bridges and terraces that, are really showing really sophisticated engineering skill helped with this sort of technology as well as the military as well. Now, on top of the military and technological innovation that's taking place, you also have agricultural and economic innovations as well. So for one part, you have terrace farming taking place, where you're building, again, these flat surfaces in the mountainside in order to grow things like corn or potatoes or quinoa. Llamas are also helping to transport goods across the empire as well. And then you also have central storage depots built along the way, sort of as checkpoints, and to be able to redistribute resources in times of famine, which could happen given that you're growing crops in such high altitudes. Now, on top of this, you also have roads and bridges, like we've talked about before, that are maintaining that connectivity between these distant regions as well. Now, in terms of the culture, just like the Aztec Empire, we have a polytheistic religion focused mostly on the sun god of Inti. There was also ancestor worship, like we saw in some of the African empires that we talked about the other day. But you also have mummification going on that is building legitimacy. So very important people would be mummified, like you might think of with the Egyptian empires of earlier history. So all of this was important for building that sort of power base. Now, in terms of architecture, there are earthquakes because it's along fault lines within the Andes Mountains. And so building stonework with earthquake resistant buildings so that they don't collapse on people was important. They also help to support cultural cohesion, so people sticking together, and imperial control by building those roads that we've talked about so many times, but also having these relay runners that would sort of run from one point to another and sort of alert the next relay runner of whatever emergency is going on, so that people could be alerted and allow them to, you know, respond to emergencies quite quickly. So, in terms of thinking about how the Inca Empire falls, it's somewhat similar to how the Aztec Empire fell. Um, so, while the fall of the Aztec Empire was led by Hernan Cortez, the Incan Empire fall was led by Francisco Pizarro, who was also a Spanish conquistador. And a couple different factors in the fall that some of which sort of differ from the Aztec Empire, is that one, the Inca Empire was already weakened due to a civil war that had taken place within its empire. And so people were sort of divided already. But then on top of it, you have the superior European weapons, which also played a role in the Aztec Empire, as well as the disease part of it, in which smallpox and other diseases are devastating the population and weakening the number of people that can respond adequately to the threat that's going on from the Spanish. And so, in all of this, centralized administration and roads could not sort of make up for the difference in guns and germs that ended up, and other weapons as well made by steel that, was going to weaken the society and destroy it. So, in terms of thinking about similarities and differences between these two empires, well, for one, on the similarity side, both had centralized administrations with a supreme ruler. They had strong militaries that could expand the empire and protect the empire. They used innovative agriculture to feed large populations. They also used religion to support one's legitimacy, including polytheistic religions. Both were connected through trade and infrastructure, um, like the Aztec markets or the Inca road systems. But there's also several differences as well. So, for one, it's geography. Aztecs were in valleys and lakes of Mexico. Incan Empire was in the Andes Mountains. For record keeping, the Aztecs used uh, one system of keeping track of things, but the Incas used the knotted strings known as quipus. And then the economic focus, Aztec tribute systems relied on conquered city states and grabbing as much as you could from those areas. And the Inca economy was based on redistribution of goods. In terms of the fall, both fell by Spanish conquest, but the Incan Empire was weakened already by the Civil War. Um, and the Aztecs fell due partly to other groups, other rival city states that were trying to bring them down. And then lastly, for technology, the Incas excelled in engineering, and the Aztecs excelled in agriculture and marketplaces as well. In terms of looking at, you know, these American empires, these were highly skilled and centralized uh, empires with very innovative and forward-thinking administrative systems. They were connected through trade, tribute, and infrastructure. They also developed unique agricultural techniques in order to support their large populations. They had belief systems that legitimized those rulers. And they also fell as a combination of European military technology, disease, and political factors as well. And so this sort of demonstrates the strengths as well as the vulnerabilities of empires when sometimes you come across something that you have never seen before. All right. With that being said, if you have any questions, please let me know. But other than that, have a great day.